Welcome to One Day in Transformation, the podcast where we understand transformation not as a project, but as an attitude. Today we welcome Aarti Gupta, a woman who builds bridges between India and Germany, between corporate strategy and startup mentality, between resilience and innovation. Aarti helped shape the IT sustainability strategy at Allianz Technology. Now leads an innovation program for AI and Agentic AI at Deutsche Bank, and also founds companies such as Fiutran, which makes tech knowledge accessible to everyone. Her career began with motorcycle repair videos on YouTube, led to development of disaster recovery strategies, and the founding of a global AI sustainability community, and shows how to change systems without losing yourself. Aarti, you're joining us today from Frankfurt. Welcome to our podcast.
Thank you, Antje. That was incredibly generous, and I'm really happy to be here. And I love how you frame transformation not as a project, but rather as an attitude, because that's exactly what feels very aligned to how I think about change and how I drive transformation. So very, very happy to be here.
And thank you for taking the time, Aarti. I know your schedule is quite busy as well, and you're traveling pretty soon. So therefore, thanks for taking that time. Aarti, I mean, we know each other since quite some time, and we learned about each other at Allianz. But your story in general is quite special because you know both worlds. You know the structured world of large corporations, the agile world of founders. But before we dive into your work, we'd like to know what was the moment when you realized that you did not just want to work in systems, but do you want to change them? And how did the roots maybe shape that in that regard?
Yeah. That question actually, Rainer, it goes back to my childhood. So I still remember being in fourth grade when my father came home and told me about his friend's daughter who had started helping her father in the business. And very casually, he said, I would love for you to take over my business one day. And that was the first time the idea of building something of my own, in that case, taking my father's business ahead, entered in my mind, and the seed of entrepreneurship was planted. And, I now, given that fact, I grew up in an entrepreneurial family. My parents, they started from absolute zero. And I really mean zero. So throughout my childhood, I have seen financial setbacks, operational emergencies, business contingencies, risk scenarios, and constant reinvention. It was so many discussions in the family every now and then because we're hitting another financial crisis. So actually, that I think has given me a very deep internal comfort with uncertainty and also the mindset of figuring it out anyways at some point in time. However, so I learned early that systems are going to break. Plans are going to fail and conditions will definitely change, but you still move forward, right? So that exposure is what I say, we will figure it out mindset is what comes from my roots.
And that's, I think it is super, super accurate in particular nowadays. If you just look around what happened throughout the last weeks with the geopolitics, with influence from the US, with influence from all over, I mean, that constant change and that constant, it will anyhow go wrong, it will anyhow go different. I think it requires exactly that mindset. So thanks already for, in the very first 3 minutes, already such kind of a very good idea and maybe a good understanding of how we should treat things. You talk about human-centered innovation and just bring that term immediately, which resonates with Antje and myself, what we do. But many executives talk about digitalization and such kind of aspects, but you combine it with emotional intelligence and strategic agility. Um, how do you explain maybe to companies or to others, to our listeners, that still think in silos and Excel spreadsheets and maybe with their own behavior like it's always in the last 50 years, but how do we explain that to them with humanity and technology and that it's not opposites?
um, Yeah, no, I hear it, Rainer, and I have to also share that this has been a recent topic that I get to hear from a lot of people on my LinkedIn. What is human-centered innovation? So you see, this actually is the core purpose I try to live, and I would say I try because it's a journey for my own self to learn. It's never going to be constant, right? But I think this is where my personal and my professional life really connect. And when you grow up watching people holding business together under pressure, you learn something very clearly. And that is that systems will work only if we respect human reality. And so when I talk about human-centered innovation, I don't mean that we have to make them emotional or soft design. I rather mean that the designs of the systems need to consider how they are going to support humans and not the technology other way around. For example, humans supporting the technology. It shouldn't be the way that we currently, I think, look at. Because if we look back at the history, every major technological revolution, now starting from electricity to internet, has ultimately improved human access, safety, comfort, right? So the real question, it shouldn't be, should we prioritize humans or technology? It's rather, are we designing the technology that respects how people actually work? And one thing that also sticks to my mind is that lately, I hear every second organization talking about client centricity, client centricity. We have to serve the clients. But I'm afraid to say that they're probably not looking, again, clients as humans. They're looking more as organizations. And that's where we possibly are going to fail. And because that leads us to the blind side, and that's about our own employees. Because I think if we design internal systems first, that will reduce cognitive load as well as give more access of resources to our employees to reduce the ambiguity, friction in their day-to-day work. Customer experience will, by default, improve. And I think a lot of organizations are not looking at that. So that is what I call as human-centered innovation in a moral stance, where it's a system design principle. How do we include human factor and not exclude it because we want to have technology now driving us?
If I may, and a bit off the script now, but that triggers me in particular now, as we are in a time where AI is being seen as the new central type of a technology all over. And I just listened to or just read an article about Elon Musk talking on the World Economic Forum just recently, and he meant that it is only 5 years and AI will be much more intelligent than human beings ever had been. And with that in mind, I mean, human centricity, and then there is something coming up which might be even more intelligent. I doubt it, to be honest, and I don't 100% agree with what he said. But in general, there is a slight risk that indeed it will be AI, it will be digital, it will be artificial technology, which will be more capable in doing things than what humanity might ever have been. And so therefore the big question is, how is that maybe changing up from your point of view? How should we change maybe to keep human centered type of a mindset?
Yeah. No, first of all, Rainer, I completely agree to your point of view that the systems will never be more intelligent than humans. I could say that individually, perhaps it's going to be the case because not every one of us has a similar level of intellectual intelligence, right? But as a meta construction of humans as humanity, I don't think that will ever fail in front of technology. So I'm with you. And this question that you asked just now, what can we do in order to keep up, is something that I'm exploring as a side hustle, which is my third side hustle, by the way, in a community. What do we need to learn? And I guess the hype currently is driving people to learn AI, to learn technology, to learn foundations, to learn about Gen AI, to learn what agentic AI is doing. But what they're forgetting is that ultimately what we're massively lacking, and this is my personal observation right now, is system thinking. So system thinking as a mindset, as a skill, has never been as important as it is now. Critical thinking, for example, has already picked, and I see that a lot of organizations are already training. So there are a couple of other soft skills, I guess, where we as humans need to emphasize even more so compared to the last years to go in hand with technology, to be able to make the right decisions where to use technology for execution versus where to just simply use it to amplify your decisions, for example. And in that case, it also takes you to learn how to spot what's not correct, right? And I think that is going to play a major role, because if you're not an expert in a certain field and you're using artificial intelligence in that particular field, the question is, how can you in fact pose the right questions to AI to find whether or not the answers are correct?
Yeah.
And that's something I'm exploring myself, because I, as a project manager, for example, or with my diverse experience, there are fields I can definitely question and tell ChatGPT so many times, this is wrong. And then it goes like, you're right. Thank you for correcting me. But then, for example, you could say as an IT sustainability expert, I would not be able to ask the right questions to even see if these GPT tools or other generative tools are giving me right answers or not. So I guess that's where lies the sweet spot and nuances that we need to tackle. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely. But I mean, maybe we jump into that topic a bit later as well. I don't want to completely get rid of our script and of the question.
Okay, then jump back towards your background. So in India, you learned early on to achieve maximum impact with limited resources. Did that play a role when you developed IT resilience strategy at Allianz or democratized tech knowledge at Fiutran? Or do you see cultural differences between Germany and India as obstacles rather than opportunities?
I love this question personally because I don't think I'm an Indian. I don't think I'm a German. I'm a hybrid, even though my parents are Indian, right? So that's how it fits with the answer, Antia. In fact, why do I choose to stay in Germany being an Indian is how I see the opportunity. So growing up in India has especially taught me, given that I was an entrepreneurial family, right? Something very clearly and very early on, how to create impact with limited resources. My parents started from zero. So we had to get there from there to where we stand today. We did not have the resources. So how do you get there to your ambitions when you don't have enough around you? And that's how our society, in fact, typically we run. But you don't, so in this case, you don't wait for perfect conditions. You just build what you have. And then you figure it out anyway, right? That's basically what we call it as figure it out mindset. And I think that mindset has specifically been useful when I worked in disaster recovery strategies and later on building my own startup, or even when we were building sustainability at Allianz Technology, Rainer, because at that onset, we did not know what does it really mean for IT. We were in the discovery phase, right? So we had to make decisions. We had to find the outputs which are of value, but still continue figuring it out. And coming to Germany, I see a different strength. And that is precision. We all know Germans are very good at it, the structure and long-term thinking. So when you combine the two best of the two worlds, I guess the real opportunity arises. You have Indian improvisation because Indians know how to do things anyway. However, this is something I live also personally. You have to fix a tap, they will do it. How? You don't know.
You just figure
And
it out.
the German engineering discipline. So combining the both, I guess, is extremely powerful, has been powerful, and still is for me. I continue learning it. I continue deploying my learnings in both my corporate experience as well as my startup. So having said that, for me, cultural differences are not obstacles, but genuinely designed inputs.
Perfect.
Again, just jumping quickly aside our typical type of questions, which we would have in the next couple of minutes. But maybe that's the right mentality for our leaders and for our politicians. As the world is changing its order anyhow at the moment, we maybe should search for new and valuable partnerships. And maybe that combination, exactly as you said it, that Indian let's just execute and do mentality combined with German engineering and process orientation. Maybe that's the right answer towards the US and the overwhelming type of it's just one person leading the world and it's the tech bros in the US leading the world. No, they are not. Maybe they will have a competitive aspect, which is then the combination of German and European and Indian mentality. I love that. That's great.
I highly advise US to take that. This might be a bit political, but I think from my personal stance, I favor Europe. I favor Asia. Combine these two, we can take care of the world.
You don't speak that out too loud. Maybe if Mr. Trump is listening, he might not like that. But
we have to cut it. We have to cut it.
No worries. We will not.
Okay, so you already mentioned your third side hustle before. So you co-built an AI embedded sustainability community with meanwhile over 400 members, and at the same time you founded a tech media startup. So what is the biggest difference between innovation in a huge company compared to being a founder, and what can large companies learn from startups and vice versa?
You definitely have amazing questions in your list, Antia. Because I again love this question too.
Props to Rainer.
And Rainer. So you too. Well, and there's a reason behind it, right? Because people usually would expect to say speed. But living both sides of the world firsthand, I've realized that the difference is actually not the speed. Speed is the aftermath. The difference is between the decision friction. So when we are in startups, the decisions are constrained because we got to survive. But at the same time, what we have different is that entire team is a decision maker. We're not too big. We take the ownership of being able to decide where we need to execute versus where we need to involve the entire team. And we're not just a doer in this case. Everybody is a decision maker. And I think this is why startups move fast, because they must. There's no other choice. While corporates, well, they can move slow because, they can afford to, I think. But corporates do also have enormous advantages. They have scale, they have capital, they have data, they have distribution, they have trust. So they do have a lot. And I think the real opportunity would be not just copying the startup chaos into corporations, but rather importing the startup decision clarity and ownership into corporate structures, and not just ticking the box or doing it because management said it. I think we put management a bit too much on pedestal. I respect the experience they bring. I do. But it's like similar way how we usually say, oh, parents are also humans. And this is how I see management team are also humans. So we should take the chance to respectfully bring our opinions and from our experience and advocate for what could fit rightly so in that environment and leave a room open for the decision. So I think the opposite is also true, but in this case, and that is the startups need corporate grade discipline much earlier than they think. So this is what I try to do a bit different. In fact, my team did say that. Why do you have this process? Why should we do this? I said, guys, from day one, I do not like chaos. I'm too German now. I love structure. And to be honest, if you're foundationally set for a structure, tomorrow you won't end up in the challenges of not being able to scale. It's like now we are thinking of AI, right? So AI first principle requires you to put data in place. It's the same when I say startup needs to consider corporate structure, but the other way around, corporates could definitely take decision structures of the startups, which I think now on a personal note, not advocating for my company, but I guess Deutsche Bank is on a very good way to do that, where they are letting the talent take the decisions as well as advise the management, because I'm myself involved in that, and I absolutely love that.
Which requires, and if I would like to add that, I 100% agree to what you said. The thing is, I guess the majority of leaders and managers within that corporates never had the situation to run a startup or even start a company themselves. So I think that startup mentality, which is always been required, and a lot of people are already talking about that, be more startup, be more entrepreneur. Entrepreneurship is the foundation of what you have to do. Well, but how should you be able to be entrepreneur? How should you be able to be startup mentality if you never experienced it? So therefore, I think all companies should be quite glad in having somebody like you within their rows, which brings the joy and the complexity of both aspects at the same time. So that's absolutely perfect. Let's just jump a bit towards Deutsche Bank, which you already now pointed towards. You had a innovation program for agentic AI, so super, super relevant topic everybody's talking about. But do you have any specific use case that shows that AI is not just optimizing processes, but truly empowering people? And how do you convince maybe skeptics who say, yeah, well, just another buzzword and typical thing?
So I would say that not a specific, we have a couple, but given the privacy standards, I would definitely highlight what's important. And that is that in Deutsche Bank, what we're trying to do is not completely flashy. It's more the output oriented and invisible. So for example, AI systems that will reduce operational decision latency. That could be one of the use cases on a high level, which I could quote. Another example from a use case I can think of is an AI system that surfaces the right information at the right time to be able to make a decision. I think that's a very important use case, given that a lot of times we want to make a decision, but we just don't have the information to do so, or we don't know who's the right person, for example, right? And we have this experience so often in corporates for the very nature of the corporates being so big. So I guess that is another one. And lastly, in this case, the AI systems that can reduce the cognitive load from the people so that they have a bit more space to think. I wouldn't say strategically, because I think strategic is a word which is often misused, but at least from operational to get to the tactical level before you get to the strategic level. So I think that's how I would put it. And when skeptics say, Rainer, that you just mentioned that it's just another buzzword, I actually would usually agree with them, because it's very easy to fall into this trap. It is, and it is happening in every corporate. We do see that. We see in the reports also 95% of the AI projects being failed. Why? Because we are proving that AI isn't another buzzword, right? And I think that's why we need to differentiate where the real value actually lies. So real value is not in doing everything and replacing all the existing processes with AI, because tomorrow our company is going to be entirely operated by robots. No. So the nuances from my perspective are in what kind of problems will AI actually solve right now versus it can't or it shouldn't. Because in a highly regulated environment, especially banking that I come from, not everything should be handled into the great hands of AI, right? So that's where we also do it differently. We don't just take AI and just go like, implement everywhere. But it's more to understand what problem do I have? So what is the pain of my users? Just like, again, startup mindset, right? Where do they have pain? What kind of medicine or painkiller do I need? It could be AI. It could be just a simple RPA. But I think that's where we need another, if I may say, training or upskilling with all the at least decision makers to distinguish between where do we really need to deploy artificial intelligence, could be Gen AI, could be, in fact, agentic AI, versus where a simple robotic process in automation would just do. Or maybe it's a hybrid. So that's how I would put it. Yeah.
And I 100% agree again. I think we in addition need to separate and turn that buzzword AI into what it really means. Exactly as you now started to list it up at the end. It's generative AI, it's agentic AI, but it's digitalization at its started already, I don't know, decades ago. Automation AI doesn't usually mean ChatGPT. So therefore, I think that is something which is misunderstood in broad fields at the moment. Um, let's just keep it with the IT topic a bit at the moment. You developed IT disaster recovery plans in your past, which reduced reporting times from 5 days to an hour. Now, as you just mentioned, you're working AI in embedding it into banking operations. If you just try to summarize that a bit from your point of view, what was your biggest learning moment along that way, and what would you probably do differently today?
Okay. Again, you guys have wonderful questions. So, and this is something I ponder a lot about by myself in my own reflections. And I would say my biggest learning through the journey of starting with disaster recovery to innovating in a bank is that speed is not resilience, and everything should not be agile. I think like quite often we are getting misled by this agility, which is compromising now the quality of our deliverables. So that is one thing. Um, Indeed, like when I think of Allianz Technology experience, we did reduce the timing from reporting cycles of a couple of days to a few hours. But the real win wasn't the reduction of the speed; it was rather architectural setup of our process. So if we do redesign how the information is moving through the systems and people, I think that's where the win could possibly be identified. And today at Deutsche Bank, I personally try to implement the same principles. And it's about not just building anything, but building resilient systems by adding the tools and the knowledge and the people you really need. So redesigning this decision pathways is also a part of this transformation, and I can see that being driven together with our management. So yeah, that would be my lesson, that speed is not equal to resilience, guys. And what I would do differently, it comes back to the human-centered innovation. I guess this is a learning that I have gained myself through my journey. So if I were to start all over again, I would definitely include behavioral design much earlier, so that technology first includes the human factor, is made for human, and it only fails at scale when human behavior is ignored.
It's a wise word. We should quote that directly and bring that message out. There is many people designing AI toolings at the moment who should think about that and take that into their day-to-day activities.
Yeah.
Yeah, possibly. That would definitely spark the amygdala.
So, Aarti, we have the tradition that every guest adds a song to our podcast playlist. Which songs comes to your mind right now or reminds you of an important moment in your career?
Oh my God. So Auntie, I have this massive playlist, which I have two different playlists. One says, you can do it. So these are all motivational songs to remind you of it. And the other one is, it's okay to be sad.
Yeah, from time to time, true as well.
Yes. And it's gonna be hard, but I'm gonna take a rather different approach. So instead of another motivational song, I'm going to quote the sad part song, and that's gonna be Fix You by Coldplay. Because I think sometimes you really need to acknowledge your emotions. You really need to acknowledge the reality of the uncertainty you're in order to get to the right action you must take. But we often ignore that, which then ultimately clogs our clarity. So that would be my song that I'm going to leave, because the personal transformation really starts the beginning of the transformation around you.
And I mean, you know that already, but I've closed the last year's playlist with Paradise from Coldplay. So I do have a very, very, very good understanding of what you think of and what you mean with talking about that. So I love that. And now we have Coldplay on our playlist again, and that's great. It wasn't me. It was you. Excellent. So maybe let's just drive into something which goes into inclusion. As I think it's quite clear, and you said that with humans being centered in everything and technology, therefore must be inclusive. What we've seen both in our former times and still do see in maybe most of the companies, that, for example, digital accessibility and inclusion is a bit treated like an elite project. What would be your argument to a board member who is hopefully listening now to us, who says, well, come on, that's way too costly, and don't we have any more important things to do?
Interestingly enough, Rainer, when you were asking what would you say to management, in my head I was like, I hope they're listening to this.
I really will.
But I'm really glad that you asked us so directly, because I think this is exactly what no, not one, but where the board usually gets it wrong, unfortunately. And I think inclusion is not a moral luxury anymore, to be honest. It's a risk mitigation strategy. Given that what we face in the times of uncertainty, given the fact, very simple and maybe off the topic example, the coming generation is not meant as resilient. At least they are seen like this. Maybe I'm not right. Maybe I'm wrong. But the question is, how can we serve the needs of now coming generation, which is totally different to the way we saw the world? So there also we have to, again, approach with inclusion, right? So I think exclusion would rather risk your business, because it would possibly give, I don't know, regulatory risk, brand risk for sure. That's something we can't forget. Operational fragility also can happen, because ultimately you work with people who represent the people you work for, ultimately, if you do think it, right? And the talent loss. I mean, that's very obvious. So boards that treat accessibility as a cost center, I guess, are mispricing the long-term risk. So inclusive design is cheaper than litigation, to be honest.
And that was the important part.
Yes, please. And I completely agreed, right? And in fact, a lot cheaper than, churn or reputational damage or brand risk that you would eventually have if you don't really build for it. So I don't think that the question is anymore about, can we afford inclusion? It's rather, can we afford fragility? And the answer is already no. So let's do it and figure out how to.
Excellent. I think that was more than convincing. I would hope for all CEOs now listening to us.
Hope so.
Aarti, if you could establish one rule for the tech industry in 2026, something that accelerates innovation while breaking down barriers, what would it be?
Thank you, Antia, because for this question, especially because it's again aligns to what I'm doing myself, and also relatively easy for me. And I think in this time of uncertainty where we are learning, we really need to build upon co-knowledge or co-learning. So what I would advise, if we were to, is to now start publishing failure modes as well. Because it's an experimentation. It's a discovery we're all taking, and not only about what tool we use, what solution we design, but also the approach we need to first design, right? So instead of marketing claims or performance metrics, maybe it's about time to talk about what did not work, and then list that down and treat that already as a lesson learned before you begin. So that would be my personal advice for industry, as you rightly asked, because I think innovation without accountability is not innovation, right? It's potentially a deferred harm. And it's about time. I think the journey started already with sustainability, because I saw how the industry changed. The industry started to come closer in identifying how to do it. And now with AI the identification journey is going to be how to do it, okay, what not to do anymore, what to do differently, but together. Yeah, that would be my 2 cents.
That was the advice to the industry in general and to the CEOs listening out there. And we have a second tradition. Beside our playlist, we do have practical inspiration to all of our listeners out there on a personal level. So we do have, last week, we spoke to Matthias Biel. He gave us the hint, well, you need to train the muscle of empathy. And he gave us the advice to just talk to strangers, to get in touch with someone in the company coffee kitchen you've never seen and talked before. And he said, well, and if you're in public transport and the person right next to you seems to be someone interesting to talk to, just do it. So that was his exercise. And Mattia and myself, we try and still try in doing so, because it's just a wonderful thing. It is bringing you out of your comfort zone, but is just giving you an experience which you haven't experienced before. So what would be your small, effective exercise we, and that means Antia and myself, and our listeners could do to maybe change the system, change our mindset, change ourselves? Anything, what would be something you would recommend?
Thank you, Rainer, for asking this. And I do have a practice that I personally follow. So I'm not going to just advise, but I'm going to share what I do and has been working very well. And given that we're talking about 1 day in transformation, for me, 1 day in transformation starts from your own transformation. And that is about self-awareness and self-reflection. So the practice that I carry myself is my journal in the morning and in the evening. In the morning, to set the tone, what am I going to do today? How am I going to show up today? What am I going to do differently than what I did yesterday? Because I think this is very important to really grow. And now we can code it either as development, maybe for AI, or as a human, however you want to code it. The prompts is your own personal choice. And the same thing going back in the evening, where reflect back on how did you, for example, if you're now talking about systems, I usually do this. I talk to myself and I ask, how did I approach the system behavior on a personal level today? Because I'm part of the system, right? And that's where it starts. Which behavior gets punished versus rewarded? And not for the incentive, but for the benefit of what we are doing. And the third favorite prompt currently I have is who benefits from its current design. And that allows me to make sure I am not forgetting the human part in everything that I do. So that would be it, because my personal observation, a lot of times failures are led because of lack of self-awareness. So I genuinely wish that a lot of people could be more self-aware and self-accepting, because that will then help them to accept others and further enhance empathy, collaboration, and everything that we can talk about, which feeds into the transformation of us as humanity together.
I love that tip. Really good.
Absolutely, absolutely. We'll love starting it and trying it out already by tomorrow. And we'll just link it as always. In our show notes, we'll link Archie's LinkedIn profile. We'll link to Fiutran, to the wonderful, amazing startup which Archie is building. And we'll definitely write down the 1 week in transformation challenge again, so you can try it out. And as always, please let us know in the comments or in the social media where we are just publishing the podcast as well, how you experience that tip. And I would be amazed to see many, many people trying out what you just said, Arti. Thank you.
So we reached our last question. So finally, Arti, what gives you hope right now? Not in the big picture, but a concrete example, maybe from your work at Fiutran or at Deutsche Bank, or the environment, or something personal, whatever comes to your mind.
So what works for me? I think, okay, so the situational answer can be very different, Antia. But if I were to say one thing, then it's a mindset. It's a mindset of the people I work with in my corporate experience, as well as in my startup, as well as my now third hustle of community. And I think I have to be very, very grateful to the universe for putting me with the right people somehow. And that is the mindset of how to make it work when it doesn't work. So when we go through a certain situation or a certain experience or an output we thought would work, we try to understand we thought it would, but it didn't. So what is the lesson that we learn and what are we going to do different the next time? So that is a solution-oriented mindset. And I think given that I have that solution-oriented mindset myself, I'm a diehard believer that there are many more people like that outside. We just need to find those partners. And when we have the majority, we can train the rest. So that's my hope.
Maybe we can just help with our podcast and what you're doing, Aarti, with Fiutran. So maybe you can just reach out to much more people. But yeah, Aarti, after that amazing conversation with Aarti, I have so many ideas. Should we start maybe with forcing every corporation to have only startups and startup mentality included into their leadership? Should we probably develop our own hotprint in India, and maybe we should combine the German and the Indian mentality here as well? Or probably just ask everyone when they last repaired a motorbike. And I have to admit that
We do the same as always, Rainer. We're trying to take over the world, or at least bring Aarti's approach to every company, because one thing is clear: transformation requires courage, curiosity, and a willingness to leave old paths behind. So
one day
in transformation.
we shape the future as it is. Thank you very much, Aarti. That was amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I also want to take the pleasure to thank you, Ante and Rainer, for what you already said, this podcast as being a platform to drive exactly the transformation. And I think you guys are doing an amazing job by breaking down the big transformation we all need to one day in transformation. Thank you for having me.
We should always just invite you for the closing words. We couldn't have done that better. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Would love to. Would love to be back.